Alright, so welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how to create a class. So how to create a class means a class that you can reuse it. You create your own class and you can use your own class. But before we going there, I'm going to show you how to create a class. So to create a class, we pretty much know how to create a class already. So I'm going to call class, okay, create class as a project name. And like I said, we all know how to create a class already by right click on your project name, and then you can just go to say new, right, in Eclipse, class. So that's how you create a class. So since the first program that you do, hello world, you already create a class. Now this time, before we want to understand what is class, okay, what is class? Like if I want to create a class named dog, okay, so a class pretty much just represent an object, okay, an object that you can see in the world. A dog can be an object, a human, a person, a book. So I can create a book class, a dog class, a person class. So in object-oriented programming concept, so this is called OP, okay, and this is standing for object-oriented programming, okay, OP. So that means when we program it, we want to write a program, we look at a program to represent an entity. An entity is just an object in the real world. Okay, so like I want to program to create a dog, so I can just create a class named dog. Okay, now we commonly create a public static void main at this point, but there are two types of classes, okay, like two types, right, of classes. One, okay, you use a class, okay, so like dog, for example, class dog, which you're going to use it, right, in another class. So that means you create a class to use in another class. Like example, the dog class that I'm going to show you here. And then another type of class, so we call a driver class, which we normally create a driver class, right? This class is going to, this class pretty much has a main method, okay, or main function, right? The public static void main string args that we normally use that, so we use this all the time, right? So all the classes, example is all the classes that you have created so far since your first program, hello world program. So those are driver classes, pretty much the class that has the main. Alright, so now I'm going to create a class to use in another class, and this class is a dog. So and then I'm going to create another class, right? So there are two classes now. That's going to use a dog class. Okay, so I'm going to name it dog, like driver class, just called dog driver. Alright, so in this case we have to include the main, right? So just like that. Now this class you already create them many times, we just implement things in here. Like for example, I'm going to like prompt the user. Okay, so I'm going to prompt the user. I'm using scanner. You may see this is a class to a scanner that you always use in order to read input from user keyboard. You use scanner. So this is a class, but this class is being created and in the library here. Okay, so when you install JRE, it pretty much has this scanner class. If I import, it's going to tell you the path java.util.scanner. Now if you really browse to rt.jar, this rt.jar is pretty much a zip file, okay, or archive file. In Java we call jar file. Okay, that is going to, if you expand this, that's going to have a package. These are packages name. You're going to see package name java.util. If you keep scrolling down, it's going to be alphabetically ordered. So we will go to java.util. Expand this again. Java.util, you should see scanner, which is S right there. So this is a class that being created, just like a dog class that I'm going to create it here. I'm going to use the dog class in the dog driver class. Just like scanner class is being created from the library JRE. So that means the one who provides JRE, like Oracle, already provides scanner class. So it's being created before for you by the organization, and then we just pretty much import it to use here. What you need to know is just how to use it. Like now I'm going to read a string, right? So I'm going to name it dog name. Okay, I'm going to prompt the user with the message. Alright, so I'm going to ask the user, please provide a dog name. Right, so the user is going to enter the dog name, and the dog name is going to be in read. Okay, so you see, when you use scanner class, you just use dot, right? Dot is the dot operator that give you an access to the methods. So we learned how to use method, right? Or the method can be accessed using dot. We call dot operator here. So keyboard dot next. So that's how you read in a string and store the values of the string that you read into the dog name. Alright, so now if you do system.out.print dog name, if we run this, you see the program is going to prompt you to enter a dog name, right? And after you enter, let's name Sam. So we enter Sam and Sam is printing out. Now what we want to learn how to create our own class, and this statement we call instantiation. Okay, instantiation. Okay, pretty much you create an object, right, or instant variables named keyboard. Okay, so keyboard here, okay, is an instance variable. Okay, pretty much an instance of a scanner. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same, like we're going to do like dog pretty much refer to the dog class here, And if you look at our project folders that we created, I have dog. So that means if it is inside the same folder or package, right, then you don't need to import. So I don't need to import. So I'm going to name dog, okay, like equals to new dog. Of course, at this point it knows it already because this is a dog class, so there's no errors. But there's no method to use yet, right? Just like if I want to do dog dot next, there's no such method to do. And last time we learned how to create the methods. So this time, after creating methods, we can just actually use it in your driver class or in main here. You can create your own class and use it here. And the reason we want to do that, because just like we want to create a scanner, because it is something that commonly people going to use it over and over again, we just create a library for it. Okay. Now, same thing. If I want to create a dog, first a dog class here, you need to understand that when you create an object, so this is an object named dog, or a class to represent an object. Okay, so they should have, the dog should have the name, okay, and the dog can eat, can bark, so things like that are the actions. So you should know that all objects in the world gonna have characteristics and behaviors. Okay, characteristics means like the height, the name, color, right, or materials, soft, cold, warm. So all the adjectives that you can think of, those are characteristics of an object. Like in this case, the dog should have a name, so I'm going to declare a string, right, and give the name to the dog like that. The dog should have string greets, and the dog should have maybe int age. Right, the dog should have more like color and so on. They're going to have a lot of characteristics or attributes going on. Okay, now normally at this point, I'm going to stop at this point for the attributes. We need to create like behaviors. Dog should have like a bark as the behaviors. A dog can run, dog can eat, so those are behaviors. So we should create those methods too. Okay, like public, right? Now, when we create the method, behaviors just represent as the methods, right? So let me write down a little bit here. So this is what we call characteristics. So, or we can call attributes. Okay. In Java we first call variables, but these are the object, right? Variables. And if you look at, we try to create behaviors, right? Behaviors. Now attributes, you can look at all the adjectives that you can think of, okay, in English, right? So just ADJ standard adjectives. And behaviors could be all the verbs that you can think of in English. Okay, so in Java we just call methods. So now I'm going to say the dog can bark. I'm going to create a method named bark. But of course, when you create a method, you should have the type. So in this case, if you wanted to return something, you should specify the return type. So I'm going to make it as string, and it's going to return I will try to say bark. Okay. Now I can say the dog. Okay. I can get the dog name too because I have the name here. So we gotta say get name. So it's gonna return name. Now at this point we want to show you a little bit. You can get a name of the dog. You can also set the name of the dog. Okay. So if I do set the name, set is gonna be void because you're not gonna return anything. So I'm gonna say set the name. And when you set, you need to pass in the name to set. If you really think about why we need to do this, you can start to compare. If I call in my main here, if I want to call dot, right? If I get the name of the dog from the user keyboard, I can actually call dog dot and set name. See, the method I just typed happened to show up, and the name that user just enter from keyboard, dog name, can just go here. Okay, and I can just shorten it to name. Then it can match to my parameters here, right? Name. Okay, but it doesn't matter, you don't have to set that, but I just make it faster because by default when you do dot set name, it's going to pick up the name as the parameter name to fill in for you. Then if I make it the same, then I don't need to retype it to make it faster. Okay, so now I can actually don't have to worry about name here. I can do the get name like that too. It's pretty much just going to return the name of the dog. Okay, after you set, but I didn't implement anything in a set yet. In order to set the name, you should refer to this dot name. Now this is referred to the attributes or the characteristics of the class. Characteristic of the class. This name. Why I have to specify this? Because if you look at this, this is also a variable's name string. If I don't do this, name equals to the name that being provided from the user keyboard, pass it through parameters and put it here to set into the attributes, then the program may be a little bit confusing. So that's why we like to use this operator to specify. I refer to the characteristic or the attributes of the class, not the variables from the parameters. Okay, then this actually refer to a variables to the parameters of the methods. Okay, without using these operators. Alright, so I'll show you one more, like public. Now if I want to get the breeds, so I can just say string get breeds, right? And you can just say return. Now since you learn how to use this, you can also use this dot breeds like that, so to refer to this, which normally when you don't have a parameters like this, you can either use this dot or without. Doesn't matter, because it's not going to be confused since you don't have a parameters just like that. That one has parameters, so that's why we better use this. Okay. Now, if you want to use this, then you better use all of them as this. If you don't want to use them, then you just pretty much just do the same, don't use them. But of course, for the one with the parameters like setter like this, we need to use it. Okay. Public void set reads, right, string. Okay. And then you can just say this dot reads equals to reads, like that. So that's how you use the this operators. Same with the age. So let me do the age. Now age, when you get age, it's going to return as int, and then get age. And return age, right? Which, if I use this, I'm going to use this to refer to the attributes of the class dog age. Next, I need to set the age and setter. Now we call this as setters. For all the set the methods. Sets for each attributes here we call setters, and we have getters, which are get, and we're going to have more gets, right? Get name, get breeds, get age, and get color. So those are getters. And it's very common that when you create a class, we're going to have to define the attributes of the class and the methods of the class. Those are getters, setters, besides other method that you want to create. Okay, so I'm going to get, this is set age. So this dot age equal to, now set age, you have to pass in the age, int age. Alright, so another one is the color. So we need to get the color, so string get color. So this dot color, which we have to return color. Now another one is set color, which you need to pass in the color as a parameter to set. And when it's void, you don't need to return, you just need to refer to this, the attributes color equals to the parameters color right here. Alright, so we have set and getters. Now we also need to, it's very common, okay, to have set and getters and attributes, and also to have a toString. So what's toString? Pretty much the method that's going to return a string type and name it toString. Okay, so what does this method do? It's going to return all the values, the actual values, like the actual value, like when you do getters, right? Get the name, you get the name out, right? So what it's gonna do, the color, you get the actual color, like if the dog is white, you get a white out. But toString is just like to combine all the getters together in one. Okay, like you want to return, and make sure you want to put in a proper format to return back. Okay, like for example, I want to return all the attributes. Like I said, combine all the getters into one. That means the name, breeds, age, color, right? So I need to return them here. So I'm going to say return the name, right? Doc, and you can pretty much just, like I said, in a nice format. Pretty much you can just type doc name is, okay, any format that you think is appropriate, okay. And then I'm gonna say this, okay, this dot name. So that's how you refer to the attributes, right? Just like when you do getters, you just say this dot age, same, but we go to concatenating them since we have more than one attribute. So which concatenate with the plus sign and say, so this one is doc name is, so I'm going to keep going with breeds, right, is, and I'm going to say this dot breeds, right, and I'm going to say age is, I'm going to say, let's do comma his or breeds is, and let's do comma age is, and then this dot age. I'm going to do the same, comma color is this dot color. Okay, so since we're done, I'm going to just do period at the end, and of course that's what we want to return. Okay, so that's pretty much toString. Again, toString is just return all the attributes values, okay, in a nicely format. Alright, one more thing when you create a class is constructor. What is a constructor? A constructor is a method, okay, that initialize all the attributes. Okay, it doesn't have to be all, some, that's why I do the values of the attributes. Okay, so in this case I'm going to show you how to create that. It's just the method, so same, we have to say public for modifier, and let's talk about the modifiers for the attributes. We like to have them as private, okay. And the reasons for this is we already have getter and setters to access to these values. And this is what we call encapsulation. Okay, that's one of the concept of object-oriented programming here. Okay, encapsulate, okay, the attributes by, okay, having private modifiers. Okay, encapsulation is just the way that you protect, since you see that another class can access the methods of this class, but not the attributes because we make them private. So that's why we like to make the method public. So that is encapsulation. Now constructor, I'm going to create constructor. Constructor is the methods, okay, that used to initialize, right, the value of the attributes. So constructor gonna has the name as class name. That means it's going to be a dog. So the same cases like that. And you don't need a type. No type. See? It says the method has the same name as your class name. Same as uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter in Java. So my constructor has to be capitalized D and then OG. Dog. Same as class name. And now constructor by default doesn't have parameters. You can create as many as constructor as you want to have, but as long as you have different parameters. Like this one has no parameters. This one can have parameters like a name. Okay, you can have more than one parameters. Name, breeds, age. You can have all of them, or you can have just portion of that. That's fine too. I'm going to create all of them. Then the same, just after, like the point of constructor, just give the initial values, right? So in this case, constructor is going to get being called, the constructor actually being called right here when you instantiate, right, an object of the reference variables here, instance variables here, named dog, which is an object of the class dog here. You actually do new. This is a constructor, like the same way that you do with scanner, but you never know this is called constructor. So now you know that this is a constructor. So this is called the one with the default. That means no parameters. But I can also create like dog, okay, and another dog, like another dog equals to new, and I can just invoke these constructors, right, to pass the name, right, breeds, age, and color in, right. So if I say let's think about a name, Ben, okay, and I can just pass everything in here, right? So bull, right, bulldog, and recipes, and age, okay, let's say 1 year old, and the color, let's say black. See, so I can just call the constructor and initialize all the values for the attributes through the constructor like that. Okay, so let me finish this out. So it's going to take the values from the user here that pass the value directly through the constructor, just like that, the scanner, and you pass system.ins to the constructor of scanner to tell that this is going to be reading from keyboard. That system.in means. But this one means dog has a name Ben, breeds bulldog, age 1, and the color is black. Okay, so this dot color. Color. So that's going to get it initialized. Now default constructor, if you leave it blank, it's going to get the default value of the attributes. Okay, like int age should be 0 and that default values can be null. But if you don't want that, you can also specify on your own, like age, right? Like that. Mean quotation, mean empty, right? Or if you want, you want to specify some name as default, you can do so. Like, let's say the default name of the dog going to be John, something like that, and default breeds. Like I said, you can leave it empty, or you can just say something none. Okay. And this dot age, let's initialize to 0, right? Color, that's it. This is just default. I'm gonna make up something white. So that means the dog that being instantiated here going to have that default values. Let's test now. Okay, so now let me just going to test without using the scanner here after I instantiate it. Okay, so I'm going to just print out the dog, right? And same as here. Now when you print out dog, you can do dot toString, right, to get to all the values of the dog right there. Instead of doing get name, get breeds one by one, you can just do dot toString. Now the good thing about toString is you don't really need to do dot toString. You can just omit it by calling just the instance variables. It's going to return, or it's going to call toString, which is going to return all the name of the dogs or the attributes values of the dog here out too. So let's test that. I'm going to just comment this out, then we can look at this first. Alright, so I need to take the plus sign here out. Okay, so let's run again. Run as. Voila! So that's how we get the dog name from the default, right? John. Breed is none. If you double check here, age is 0, color is white. But if you want to use another type of constructor that passing all the attributes value as the parameters, then we get the dog. Ben, breed is bulldog, age is 1, color is black. So that's how we create a class and use them. Like I said, I just showed you how to use some of this. Now if I start to put this back to the keyboard, please provide a new dog name. That means I can actually set the dog name for dog. Instead of John, I can replace it with something else and do dog get name to get the new name out, or I can just say dog, right? If I just say dog without dot toString, that means it's actually called toString. So that means I do not really need this. So let's see. I'm going to change the name of dog. Okay, new dog name. So let's say Sam. There you go. So dog name is Sam, breed is none, age is 0, color is white. If you want to, just say with the breeds, so pretty much just do prompt the user, right, with breeds, and say string breeds equal keyboard.next, and then just call doc.setBreeds, and then when you print out you should get a new breeds. Okay, like again, you can always use more than this. Like for example, I can create more methods, okay, and call more method by using dot operators on my driver class. Dot operators, right, is the key. So like for example, I have bark. If I want to see how my dog sounds, right, so I'm going to say dot bark. So let's do dot bark. Okay, so run it. So the new dog name Ken. So Ken breed is none, age is 0, color is white. Let me run it one more time to see. It's supposed to return and show bark, which it will. I know my system always like that. J. There you go. So bark from there. Alright, so the application of this is if I want to pretty much just create a program to let the dog bark, I can just loop and make bark bark bark, and I can put the voice, right? If I link import the voice in, it's going to make the real sounds out. I can just create a simulator of a dog with Java program, do images and things like that. So that's about it. So I guess thank you for watching, and if you have concern, let me know. Thanks.